Welcome to our first episode of the Oracle Scroll Trailblazer series. This is a series where we get a chance to catch up with the elders, the leaders, the founders of our community, those who have been our teachers and our mentors, and glean some of the wisdom that they have shared with us over the years and make use of it again as we continue to grow. So come on along and join us for the Oracle Scroll Trailblazer Edition. Welcome to the Oracle Scroll Trailblazers series. This is a series where we get an opportunity to meet the leaders and the elders of our spiritual community, those who have been our teachers and mentors. Enjoy as we visit with our old friends. Today, we have an important turning point. The Oracle Scroll has a couple of different projects, and this one is the latest. And I'm calling this one the Trailblazers project. This is where we get acquainted with some of the teachers and founders within our group, within our community, a spiritual community. And some of these folks have been in the business, if you want to put it that way. They have been doing their work in the spiritual realms for decades. And so they have a wealth of information and knowledge to share. And we're just trying to touch base with them and find out exactly how their development came about and how we can apply those principles in our own lives. So today's guest is Elizabeth Muschett. And most people know Liz as an astrologer. She's been in that realm for many years, teaching and helping people with their astrological information. But she's also very much into numerology, and she's at the present moment just publishing a book in that subject. She's also an expert in tarot, and there's got to be more. I just made that short list. So as we talk with Liz, we're going to learn more about her development, where she came from, where she's going. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Liz, to our platform. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad that we were able to connect. So if we follow my general format, which is extremely general, and I'm sure we'll shift a few times as we go. I guess I always like to hear people's, I guess I call it their coming out stories. I like to hear how you got started. Did you feel like you were born with it, or is it something that developed? How would you describe your first spiritual contact and your first spiritual experiences?
Well, I learned from a very young age to not shut off my intuitive abilities with the guidance and help of my maternal grandmother. And she helped me to remember what some of the abilities that I practiced in past lives. So it's a lot about remembering and, of course, learning some new things to go along with that. So she was very instrumental for me and to me as I grew up. And she would test me. And so I don't really know. I mean, I want to say I was between 2 and 3 that I can kind of remember that she started working with me. But I was very blessed to have her.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so. Do you kind of consider it to be a hereditary thing with you?
Yeah, because it's passed down from generation to generation, and oftentimes it'll skip a generation. But finding out even from my father, he knows how to well witch or douse. I mean,
Mhm.
there's different terms for that because he learned that at a young age. My mom even has some intuitive abilities, but really hasn't worked to incorporate or build upon them to have them grow. And my one sister, Alice, she even has some intuitive abilities, and she uses hers a lot with the animals because
Mm.
she has horses, and so she really uses that with the animals. So yeah, it kind of passed down through the family.
Mhm.
But I also believe that everybody has intuitive abilities, and sometimes you just have to take time to practice or hone your skills. We get so busy in the world that we kind of tune them out or turn them off, as you might say.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people tell stories of early early recognition of their talents, and then recognizing immediately they need to cover those up because they're not generally accepted. So if you were to looking back, and I know this is an exercise you may not have been prepared for, um, but looking back at your childhood and early adulthood, would you say that your spiritual connections were helpful, or did you sometimes find them to be a little bit intrusive? I mean, how did they enhance your well, I don't know, your school experience and your early adulthood?
Well, going to school was a little bit tough because I call it, being in the mental brain and then being in the spiritual brain is kind of tough at times to go between the two. But being intuitive or spiritual was helpful because it would always give me good guidance. Now, whether I listened to it or not was a different story. When I didn't listen to it, it's like, I might have said, oh, well, I knew better than that.
Mm-hmm.
and um, and then also sometimes it's the spiritual or intuitive side can be so much coming through that it can often, I used to call it, it could be a curse, but I've learned to work with that and ask for information that's useful to me, my students, people around me, instead of so much getting information from something that's 5,000 miles away. And how can I be directly helpful with that? Yes, I can say a prayer or
Right.
ask for help for that situation, but to be bombarded with those kind of messages sometimes gets burdensome.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So, at what point in your development did people start to recognize you as an authority, or as someone that they could use for spiritual connection?
Well, probably on and off through most of my life, because I know in high school, a lot of the kids came to me when they had problems, and I didn't even really think of it so much as them coming to get guidance. But now that I've matured, um, I kind of recognize that, wow, they came and seeked me out, which I didn't even have those types of experiences that they were seeking information and guidance about.
Mhm.
And then, for a while, I kind of wanted to keep it a secret when I was in my 20s and 30s.
Mhm.
But I started doing massage professionally in my 20s, even though I'd done massage to the animals and my grandmother way before that. And my grandmother kind of planted a seed in me, I believe, about doing massage. And my grandfather was in the I want to say 1932 Olympics in Los Angeles
Wow.
in gymnastics, and he won a silver medal. And so he kind of planted a seed also of massage. Um, but their massage was really rough and they used rubbing alcohol. And so that was a lot different.
Mhm.
And so, throughout my lifetime, I worked with the animals, um, what I would call an animal type of massage. And
Hmm.
now that's very common that we do animal massage.
Yeah.
And so it's like you can look back and you don't realize where certain things came from, but then later on you can look back and see how it influenced or came into your life to be
Yep.
passed down and used. Um, and so like I learned probably really young to communicate with the animals, but didn't realize that there was even such a thing as animal communication until I was probably in my 30s.
Right. Right.
So um, and now that it's a very common practice for people to communicate with the animals.
Yes, it is. There are lots of animal communicators around, and I still am in awe sometimes when I see the work that they do. So now, as we move forward, I guess I'm trying to keep this chronologically, and I am only speaking from my very abbreviated knowledge of your life. So fill in anywhere you think I'm leaving something out. But as you move forward and married and had a family, now was your entire that experience raising a family, was that in Puerto Rico or?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So now, because you that's a bit of culture shock there. You were in a totally different atmosphere. How did that affect your spiritual connections? Did it make them stronger? Did it make you more apprehensive? How did it affect your attitude toward it as well?
Okay. I went to Puerto Rico when I was 19 because I met a man in Alaska when I was working in Alaska when I was 19, and moved there the next year or within a few months, and we married and had children. So I really liked the different culture. I always had intuitive information that I would probably either live in the Caribbean or the South Pacific, and I ended up in the Caribbean.
Wow.
So I already kind of had hints and clues before. So it probably wasn't that much of a shock. And I love the ocean and the beaches. So that was really nice.
Hmm.
Um, but on some levels, for certain groups, I just didn't talk about it. And even today, I have friends that those are discussions that don't come up,
Hmm.
and, we can be friends. But I'm very much more open as I've matured to tell people what I do. And it took me a long time to even charge for an astrology consult or a tarot consult,
Right.
but would often get phone calls back, months later and saying, "Oh, that was really good. And, I didn't really believe you when you told me, but wow, that was amazing. It all came true." And it's like, I had no idea what they were even talking about because I mean, I might remember having a consult with them, but I remembered none of the context
Right.
of
Right.
what had happened in that consult because I'm relaying the information to that person. It's not my information for me. So,
Right.
um, but even doing massage for 33 years, a lot of information would come through for people. Oftentimes, I'd go into what we call a medium reading for somebody and was kind of unaware and unconscious that I was even doing it
Right. Right.
because I'd have people call me back a few weeks later and go, "Can you give me some more information about this, this, and this?" And I'm like, "What?" But it was
Yeah.
just so natural. And, I always thought, well, doesn't everybody do this?
That's often the case. People in our spiritual community either grow up feeling like they're so totally radically different than anybody else, or they assume everybody does it, and so it's not like there's just a common acceptability level. So now, if you were to assess your experience there, do you feel like you passed down some of your knowledge and wisdom to your children, or other acolytes that happen to show up in your practice?
For my children, they have certain abilities, but at this point haven't chosen to work with them as much. My son I would say has worked with them a little bit more than my daughter, but I've kind of left it up to them to decide how much they want to integrate or not integrate.
Hmm.
Um, but I know my son I've spent many lifetimes with, and he's a very old soul. And I've spent lifetimes with my daughter, of course, but she's not quite as old of a soul
Okay.
of how I would describe it.
Right.
But I think we come and we repeat lifetimes with many of the people we're involved in, family and friends and all that. So,
Right.
and of course, students that I've taught, they've learned a lot.
Hmm.
So, and they teach me a lot also. So,
Yes. Don't they though?
right. So it goes hand in hand. Sometimes I think I learn more than they do, but
Hmm.
they tell me otherwise. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I know that. I know that feeling. There's. I always say there's no better way to learn than to teach. So
Well, then you know what you know,
exactly.
and you know what, and you also know what you don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's always, to me, at least, it's always like, oh my gosh, I had no idea I knew that much about this or that. And so it's kind of it's an opening to new knowledge. So, okay, anything, now that's kind of where you were. Then you came back to the Northwest and you've spent time here. Now, at what point did you begin integrating? I don't know, maybe all the way through, but at what point did you begin integrating numerology, tarot, and some of the other practices that have made you what you are now?
Well, I would say that that kind of started when I was probably like about 12,
Oh, wow.
because, and maybe even younger, because my grandmother was always introducing me and making sure I had a book or was telling me about numerology, tarot, astrology, even though I probably didn't really start studying it regularly till I was 15.
Okay.
And then on and off, sometimes I'd study it more and then sometimes not as much. When my children were young, I spend a great deal of time just raising them and spending time with them.
Right.
But after they were probably like 6 and 7, I started really studying a lot of esoteric subjects.
Mhm.
Um, in 1995, I obtained my Reiki mastership and have been teaching Reiki ever since. So um, next year will be 25 years that I've been teaching Reiki. So
Isn't it amazing? I mean, I remember not being able to recall anything that happened 25 years ago. And now it seems like it was just last year. It's like, oh my gosh, time has gone so quickly. So, so as you look forward, and well, let's talk about your book a little bit right here. You and you're collaborating on a book of numerology, and you're also bringing in some of the astrological aspects. um, how has that experience, how's that been for you? Yeah, just explain and describe that feeling.
well, I never even thought about being an author. And I think it was about 15 years ago, I went to a, a tarot reader or a psychic, whatever you would want to call her, in Virginia. And she told me I was going to be an author and write several books. And I never really thought much of it, but it's come to pass. So, Gloria Riley is a numerologist, and she invited me to join her and Jenny to do an updated version of Gateways to Change that they did in 2002, and basically um, ran out. The information in the book and charts ran out in 2012.
Mm,
So now the book's called Gateways to Change 2018 and Beyond, Keys to Navigating the Seas of Life Using Numerology and Astrology. In the original book, they just had a couple of pages on astrology. So I was able to elaborate on the moons and full moons,
mm,
and then using the moon on the first day of the year as um, an influence of what that year possibly can bring in. It's not the whole year, but it does have a certain kind of influence, but you can use it in different ways, and that's all explained. And then added Mercury retrograde in the book.
Hmm.
So it's taken quite a bit longer than I anticipated, had many twists and turns, but we made it back to completion, and it is available on Amazon.com.
Oh, already. Great.
Yes. We're waiting a few more days to announce it, because Amazon, it takes a few days that you can put pages that they can view inside your book. So there's
Right.
just a couple little um, housekeeping things to take care of to finish and get the author pages completed for everybody. And so that's really exciting. So
Hmm.
I'll be taking it around and offering it for sale, and also can be bought on Amazon.com. And I want to teach a couple workshops on how to use the book. It simplifies things down, and it has charts that you just basically find your month and day of birth, and then it'll tell you in what numerological year you are in,
Hmm.
instead of hand calculating it. And
I need that
oftentimes,
book.
oftentimes people make a mathematical mistake.
Yeah.
And so it just really simplifies it to go to the charts, and then you can go to the number information that you're in for that year. So it really does a lot of shortcuts for you. It's
Hmm.
very nice.
Oh, good. So it's a reference book that you're going to keep somewhere handy all the time. It's not just to read it once and put it on the shelf.
Right. You can refer back to it every year because our numbers change.
Hmm.
You can look up your friends, your family, your coworkers. I mean, it really simplifies it, and you don't have to know where they're born or what time they're born, or
Right.
if you just know the day and month of their birthday, you can look up a lot of information for them, and you can know your monthly numbers. There's a chart in there how to you just look at the chart, find your monthly number, and you go read about what that month
Wow.
possibly has in store, the daily numbers. I mean, it just simplifies everything. No, you're not sitting there trying to hand calculate it, and some people just are not good with math. So
No, no, and I'm one of those.
well, and even those of us that are good with math, we don't seem to do math as much anymore because we have lots of calculators and we just
That's
don't have
right.
to do it. So um,
We have too many crutches, too many things we can depend on, so we choose to do that. So, so if you were to, oh, I'm sorry, were you finished with that thought?
I just wanted to say, and the print is, it's not extra large, but it's large enough that you're not, having to use a magnifying glass. It's like easier to read than
Okay.
some books. And I know more and more books are going to that format. So,
I'm beginning to appreciate that myself. Yes. So, so as you look around us, well, I guess there's one more question I had too that I want to touch on because this is something. Have you ever had an experience with a client or just getting information experience? Have you ever had an experience that actually made you react with trepidation, that scared you just a little?
one time I got information to go tell somebody something, and it's like I know that they're very strictly religious, for lack of a better way to say it. And it's
Hmm.
like, and I'm supposed to tell that person that. And basically, luckily, my guide said, no, I didn't have to go tell them that.
You got off the hook.
Because I was like, how am I going to tell this person that?
Right.
Um, but no, not really. My guides are really good at helping me, and I've really practiced to, even if it's challenging information to give it in a kind and compassionate way.
Right.
So, um, and oftentimes I just say what I get, and people say, no, no, no. And I get lots of return calls and say, well, I'm really sorry. I think I was rude to you or something. And it's like, no, you weren't rude. Or, And they're like, well, it happened. And it's like, well, kind of don't ask if you don't want to know.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of that. We see denial every day when we're doing this work, don't we? So, um, so as you look forward, and well, all of us, spiritual community or otherwise, are looking at each other, shaking our heads with the situation in our world today. So, is there anything that comes through to you as particularly oh, something we can hold on to as a community? Something that is, I don't know, I guess keeping your eye on the prize, or some form of belief that can assist us in dealing with the turmoil.
Stay in love, compassion, and kindness.
Perfect.
Because it's like, it feels like this anxiety and this turbulence wants to suck us in, and as much as we can, if we can stay out of it and be as grounded as possible, because we are going through a lot of changes,
Oh boy.
and it will continue for a while yet. So,
Mhm.
um, but we wouldn't make changes if things didn't come to the surface to be aware of and looked at, and we would just stay the same if everything was great and
That's
easy.
true. That is true. Change only happens when it's necessary. And we're experiencing that on lots of levels. And in a way, what you just said there, it's not over. Thank goodness, because we don't want to stop here. we've got some more work to do, so we want to keep going. So, well, as you look at your own practice, um, what is, if you could boil it down, I know this is not even a fair question, but if you could boil it down to one or two key points, what has your spiritual experience, the work you do, what has it taught you? And what's the one thing that you make sure to impart to your clients?
Oh, well, I know grounding is very important to all of everybody, because lots of times we aren't grounded. Um, to just keep breathing and keep moving forward. Um, to have compassion for ourselves and others. Um, and we're all in this together.
Mhm. That's good. That's good. And
Hmm.
your point there, that it seemed like a simple little point, but it's huge. The point of having compassion for ourselves as well as everybody around us. We sometimes forget that we are part of that community, and we have to include ourselves. And I think that's very important to all of us as well, to make sure we're, well, taking care of ourselves.
Yes, self care is really important. Most of us take way better care of our cars than we do ourselves. And that's sad.
It is sad, but it's true. It's very true.
Hmm.
So, and so as you look forward in your work, um, yeah, well, I guess I have to ask the question, is there anything brand new on the horizon that you're just excited to study? Or is there something, a new turn of events? I mean, as if writing the book wasn't enough. I mean, what else? What else is in your near future, or even down the road a little further?
Teaching more classes, um, really getting into teaching intuitive development for people. I find, a lot of people have a lot of natural ability, but they kind of need a little guidance.
Mhm.
Because when I was younger, I know it was important to have a mentor, and that can be a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Because to me, that doesn't mean that you take zillions of classes from them or whatever, but it's just kind of help give them a little bit of guidance and keep
Right.
them on track. Because there's things that do come up that sometimes if you talk to somebody that has experience, they can kind of help you, because oftentimes us that have been dealing with a lot of clients over a number of years, we've had different experiences, so we kind of know where to go with that.
Right.
And sometimes people get stuck, and so some guidance is really important, because it's amazing the young people that are coming now that have amazing talent.
Yeah.
Um,
They are many of them enlightened beyond their years, as I like to say.
yes, but it's just like a little bit of guidance is very helpful, or even groups that you can talk to about what's going on in your practice. And sometimes it's like dealing with a client. Like I teach Reiki regularly, and oftentimes there's things that come up when they're doing Reiki on somebody, and they want to know how to handle that. And a lot of people aren't even aware to just say, I don't know what to do with that, but
Right.
let's find out, or I'll ask somebody. They don't even have somebody to ask.
Right.
And so having the spiritual communities or groups that you can just talk about professional things, or even whatever, because I know as we're doing these things, we change a lot too.
Yes, we do.
And so we need support also. So
that goes back to that showing compassion for ourselves, making sure we factored our care into the picture. So, well, as we come to the conclusion of our interview, is there one particular thought that you would like to leave with everyone? Something that you'd like to impart?
Well, I want to say, have patience with yourself and your clients, and keep breathing and stay grounded.
Those are very good pieces of advice right there. So now give us again, the title of your book is
Gateways to Change 2018 and Beyond.
Okay. And it is now available on Amazon.
That's correct.
In paperback, or is it also in Kindle?
It's on paperback, and we will work to get it on Kindle. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, because that depends on other people that I wrote the book with. So
Right. Okay. No problem. But having the book in hand it sounds like it's going to be one that we're going to refer to quite often. So I would encourage everyone to head on over to Amazon and pick up your copy today, because it's going to be, you're going to want to know.
Well, yes, it will be useful. It's pretty much endless, so it'll be useful for many years to come.
Okay. All right. Well, Liz, I can't thank you enough. You are our very first interview on this particular program. So I appreciate your help, your support. You've always been one who was interested in jumping into things and getting things started. And I appreciate that very much. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We look forward to, well, having you back again, where you can talk more about some more projects that are coming up in our future.
Well, thank you for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Oracle Scroll Trailblazer series, and we ask that you please send us any comments, requests, or any other suggestions to theoraclescroll@gmail.com. Watch for new episodes coming up soon.